In a week, I would be king. Or at least that was the plan. I had spent 15 years climbing the corporate ladder at Meridian Industries with the single-minded obsession of a man possessed. Each rung an earned victory, each promotion a confirmation that I belonged here. At 41, I was finally about to reach the summit. Harold Clean, our aging CEO with his silver hair and lined face, had personally told me that next Friday's board meeting would make it official. The corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline, the executive parking spot that smelled faintly of leather and success, the seven-figure salary and stock options that could buy a small town. All mine. "You've earned this, Simon," Harold had said, clasping his weathered hands behind his back as he gazed out over the city. "You've been the backbone of this company's operations division. It's time you got the recognition you deserve." Recognition, that's all I'd ever wanted. Growing up as the scholarship kid at prep school, constantly reminded that I didn't belong, then navigating a state university in a sea of Ivy Leaguers who looked down on me, I'd learned early how to fight for every scrap of respect. And I had fought, scraped, and clawed my way to the top. My wife, Elise, understood that hunger. She had clawed her way up as well, leading the digital marketing division with a sharpness that left colleagues trembling in admiration and fear. We were, on paper, the perfect power couple. Everyone whispered about us in the break room, the ones who balanced ambition, charm, and loyalty. Or so I thought. The first crack in that illusion came on a Tuesday morning. I wanted to surprise Elise, show her that I noticed her little joys. So I walked into her office with 2 steaming cups from that overpriced cafe she adored, hoping we could share a private celebration of my upcoming promotion. Her office, 2 floors below mine on the 32nd floor, had an expensive view that cost the company extra, but kept our marketing queen happy. I knocked on her doorframe, balancing the cups. She looked up from her laptop, and I froze. Her wedding ring was gone. The platinum band with the princess-cut diamond I had saved 6 months to afford, now absent from her manicured finger. "Simon?" Her voice carried an edge sharp enough to slice steel. "What are you doing here?" "Bringing my wife coffee," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "Thought we could talk about dinner plans. Maybe celebrate a little early." She gestured vaguely at her laptop. "I'm in the middle of a campaign review. We can't be seen having personal conversations during work hours. It looks unprofessional." Unprofessional. After 10 years together, 8 years married, she had never, not once, spoken to me like that. We had been partners in everything: grocery shopping, budget meetings, career choices, always a team. And now, this. "Since when do you care about appearances?" I forced a laugh, trying to shake off the cold edge in her tone. "Remember when you used to sneak into my office during lunch breaks?" Her cheeks flushed, not with embarrassment or nostalgia, but something else, something distant. "That was different. We weren't department heads then, right?" I placed the cups down. Hers remained untouched. "Well, enjoy your campaign review," I muttered, leaving her office with a hollow feeling gnawing at my chest. The humiliation hit me like a freight train halfway to the elevator. I had always thought of us as equals, partners who faced the world together. That day, I realized how little I actually knew. That evening, she tried to patch things over. We sat in our Lincoln Park condo with takeout Chinese food. "I'm sorry about today," she said, eyes avoiding mine. "I've been stressed about the Morrison account. You know how demanding pharmaceutical clients can be." I wanted to believe her. God, how I wanted to believe her. But the question slipped out anyway. "Where's your ring?" She glanced at her bare finger. "I took it to the jeweler. One of the prongs was loose. Should have it back Friday." Plausible, reasonable. But she had never, not once, taken that ring off before. I tried to test the waters. "Maybe after I get the CEO announcement, we could start trying for kids. We've talked about it before." Something flickered across her face. Panic? Disgust? Gone too quickly to identify. Let's see how the promotion goes first. Big changes coming. Big changes? She had no idea. The next morning, I decided to trust my instincts, though at this point, paranoia and intuition had become indistinguishable. Instead of going straight to my office, I detoured past marketing. I needed to know what was happening to my marriage, even if I didn't want the answer. Frank Morrison, our IT director and my closest friend, joined me for an early coffee. He had the cynical wisdom of a man who'd seen 3 CEOs rise and fall, his hair already streaked with gray. "You look like hell," he said, stirring sugar into his espresso. "What's eating you?" I leaned in, lowering my voice. Hypothetically, if someone wanted to monitor network activity for a specific user, how would they go about it? Frank raised an eyebrow. Hypothetically, that someone would need administrative access and a damn good reason, corporate espionage or marital problems. I wanted the truth, not the judgment. "Does it matter?" Frank leaned back, sighing. "Simon, if this is about Elise spying on her company email, it's not the answer. Talk to your wife before you do something stupid." But talking wasn't an option anymore. Every conversation with her felt like navigating a minefield. That afternoon, I stationed myself near the marketing department coffee station during the 3 p.m. gossip session. Mara Chen and Tasha Williams, Elise's closest work friends, were chattering louder than they realized. "Did you see her Friday night?" Mara said. "Girl was practically glowing. Must have been some conference." "Conference? My buttocks," Tasha laughed. "Since Simon was at his mother's birthday party, my blood ran ice cold. Think she's finally going to leave him?" Mara shrugged. "Depends on how Friday goes. If Nathan gets the promotion instead of Simon, she won't have to choose between them anymore." Nathan. Nathan Lockach, head of sales. 43, divorced, charming, and apparently irresistible. One of the candidates for CEO. The other candidate, in fact. I stood frozen, coffee mug trembling in my hands, as the pieces of my life rearranged themselves into a picture I didn't want to see. My wife wasn't just cheating, she was hedging her bets. If Nathan won, she'd leave me. If I won, she'd stay. For the money and the status. Either way, I was nothing more than a pawn in her game. Later I saw them, Elise and Nathan at the lobby security desk, trying to hide but failing miserably. Nathan's hand rested possessively on her thigh. Elise leaned into him, melting, whispering, laughing, a private world where I didn't exist. I took 3 photos before they separated. Nathan whispered something in her ear that made her laugh genuinely, a sound I hadn't heard in years. As she straightened his tie with intimate familiarity, one thought crystallized. If they wanted to play the king's game, I'd show them how a real king handles traitors. That night, back at our condo, Elise strolled in humming, completely unaware that my world had shifted irreversibly. "Good day?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. "Productive," she replied casually, opening the fridge. "Nathan closed the Henderson deal. We're celebrating tomorrow night." Celebrating. Humming. That name, Nathan, rolled off her tongue like it belonged in her life more than mine ever had. I pulled out my legal pad and started taking notes. Photos, potential witnesses, timelines. This was no longer just betrayal. It was calculated sabotage. Elise was manipulating my career, ensuring she profited no matter which way the CEO vote went. And then I remembered the prenuptial agreement. She had insisted on it before we married, saying it was just formality. Now it was my lifeline. Infidelity meant forfeiting everything, including future earnings. And I had proof. Photographs, emails, witnesses, everything. Elise thought she was playing chess. I had been studying the board all along. Friday was 2 days away. The board meeting would determine my career, my life, and the ultimate choice Elise would make. But she had already made it. And she had chosen wrong. The hurt and betrayal were still there, gnawing at me. But now they were overshadowed by something colder, more calculating. If Elise wanted to play games with my life, she was about to learn how underdogs win. They don't play fair. If they want a king's game, I'd play it bloody. The countdown to Friday had begun. Thursday morning arrived in a gray drizzle, the kind that made Chicago look like a noir film, the streets slick with the residue of overnight rain. I woke early, my mind refusing rest. The previous night had been a restless blur of calculations, notes, and photographs, each one a reminder that my life was no longer my own. Elise had chosen, and she had chosen wrong. But that didn't mean I was powerless. Far from it. I poured myself a double espresso, the bitter liquid cutting through the fog of my sleepless thoughts. The condo was silent, the kind of quiet that presses against your skull until it feels like your own pulse is too loud. I stared out the window at the skyline, imagining the boardroom where I was about to claim the CEO title, or perhaps where my empire would crumble. Every decision, every move, was about to matter more than it ever had. I didn't take the usual route to my office. Instead, I detoured past marketing. Instinct told me there were more cracks to find, whispers I needed to hear. The corridor was empty, the hum of fluorescent lights echoing against the polished floor. I paused outside the open office doors of Elise's team, pretending to check my emails while catching fragments of conversation. Two of her colleagues, Mara Chen and Tasha Williams, were talking in hushed tones. "Did you see her with Nathan yesterday?" Mara whispered. "Lobby right by the security desk. I swear they looked, I don't know, serious." Tasha laughed softly, but not without a hint of concern. "Serious? Oh, they're serious. I mean, it's Nathan. You know the way he moves, how he charms clients. Imagine that at home." The words hit me like a hammer to the chest. Elise wasn't just having an affair. This wasn't a fleeting moment of weakness. This was calculated, methodical, and audacious. I backed away slowly, heart hammering. Every step toward the elevator was heavy with realization. She had been playing a game, and I was the unwitting pawn. By the time I reached my office, my hands were shaking slightly. I set my coffee down and pulled out my legal pad. Notes from yesterday were still scattered across the surface. Timelines, photos, witness possibilities. I needed more. If I was going to confront this, I needed proof beyond emotion. I needed incontrovertible evidence. Frank Morrison was my next move. He was the IT director, a man who could make computers bend to his will, and the only person I could trust not to betray me. I walked briskly to the IT department, past rows of blinking servers and cables that smelled faintly of ozone and ambition. Frank looked up from his tangle of cords, eyes narrowing at my approach. "You look worse than yesterday," he said, already predicting the chaos that had invaded my life. "Please tell me you didn't do anything stupid overnight." "Define stupid," I replied, setting my photos on his desk. They were clear, Nathan's hand on Elise's thigh, her body leaning into him, her face lit with a delight I hadn't seen directed at me in years. Frank leaned in, eyes scanning the images, his brow furrowed, and for a moment I saw a mix of anger and sympathy. "Son of an unpleasant person," he muttered. "How long has this been going on?" "No idea," I admitted. "But I need to find out. Can you help me?" Frank hesitated, weighing ethics against our 15-year friendship. "There's a guest network for client meetings," he said finally. "It's less secure than the main system. If someone connects a personal device to it, hypothetically, their activity could be monitored. Hypothetically. And if they're using company resources for personal business during office hours, that's a violation of the acceptable use policy." "Good enough," I said, my jaw tight. Within the hour, Frank had set up monitoring software, encrypted and invisible to normal users. I didn't have to lift a finger, just wait. And they slipped up quickly. By Thursday afternoon, I was pretending to review quarterly reports when Frank's message pinged on my screen. Birds are singing in Conference Room C. Conference Room C was supposed to be booked from 2 to 4 p.m. for a digital marketing strategy session. I grabbed my phone, slung my jacket over my shoulders, and made my way to the 31st floor. The corridor was deserted, the echo of my shoes against the polished floor sounding unusually loud. I pressed my ear to the conference room door. Voices. Elise's, unmistakable, soft and breathless. Nathan's, confident and predatory. "Are you sure about this?" Elise asked, voice slightly quivering but composed. "Of course," Nathan replied. "He hasn't suspected a thing. Maybe we should wait until after Friday." "Why?" Elise's tone betrayed a flicker of worry. "In a week, it won't matter what he thinks," Nathan said. "If Klein chooses me over Simon, she won't have to choose. If he chooses you, the plan still works. Divorce, half the assets, new life. Either way, we get what we want." We get what we want. The words cut deep. She wasn't just unfaithful, she was calculating, ensuring her own advantage regardless of who became CEO. I ducked into a supply closet down the hall and watched them leave. Nathan adjusted his tie while Elise smoothed her hair. Their ease, their familiarity, their shamelessness. It made my stomach turn with a mixture of rage and cold determination. That night, at home, I stayed up until the condo lights dimmed in slumber. I plotted, I researched, I calculated. Illinois divorce law, asset division, prenuptial agreements. I devoured every clause that could protect me. And then I remembered the prenuptial. Elise had insisted on it before our wedding, claiming it was just a formality. But its infidelity clause was now my lifeline. Any proof of cheating meant forfeiture of her claim to my assets. Photographic evidence? Check. Electronic communication? Check. Witnesses? Plenty. Friday was coming. The board meeting, the moment of professional triumph, the ultimate confrontation. Elise had chosen, but she had chosen wrong. I spent Thursday night like a general preparing for battle. My home office became a war room. Photos printed, files organized, timelines cross-referenced. Each revelation about Elise and Nathan was another arrow I could use, another move in a game she thought she was winning. The betrayal, sharp as broken glass, fueled me. It transformed the hurt into something colder, more dangerous. Calculation, anger without loss of reason, vengeance without hesitation. Elise had underestimated me. She thought I was distracted, vulnerable, an easy piece to move on the board. She had no idea I had been studying her, learning her strategies, anticipating her moves. Thursday bled into Friday. I barely slept. My dreams were filled with images of Elise and Nathan, of boardroom battles, of a king betrayed but preparing to strike back. The city outside my window pulsed with its usual rhythm, oblivious to the personal war raging in the 32nd and 31st floors of Meridian Industries. I knew the moment of confrontation was close. Elise had played her hand. Nathan had played his. And I was ready to play mine. By Friday morning, I was poised, tense, a predator disguised in a suit and tie. The drizzle that had accompanied Thursday morning had turned into a fine, persistent mist, coating the city in a gray sheen that mirrored my mood. Corporate warfare awaited, personal betrayal demanded reckoning, and for the first time in days, I felt a dark sort of clarity. The summit was no longer just a professional goal, it was a battlefield, and I intended to emerge victorious. Friday arrived like a storm in slow motion, the gray Chicago sky hanging low and heavy over the city, as if it knew what was about to unfold. The drizzle from the previous days had turned into a persistent mist, turning the streets into slick, reflective mirrors. Each reflection reminded me that appearances could be deceiving. My life had always been about control over my career, over my reputation, over the perception of others. But Elise had taken that control, twisted it, and used it against me. I arrived at Meridian Industries early, long before most employees even considered pouring their first cup of coffee. The lobby gleamed with corporate sterility, its polished floors reflecting the fluorescent lights and patterns that reminded me of chessboards. Today, I felt like a chess player studying his opponent, anticipating moves, waiting for a moment to strike. Elise was already in her office, though I didn't go directly to her floor. Instead, I took a detour past the marketing department, lingering near the usual coffee station where whispers traveled faster than emails. I wasn't here to eavesdrop, at least not entirely. I was looking for evidence, proof that could transform suspicion into certainty. It didn't take long. Mara Chen and Tasha Williams, Elise's closest colleagues, were already gathered around their thermoses, their voices carrying despite their attempts at discretion. "Did you see them yesterday?" Mara asked, glancing around nervously. "Lobby, Nathan and Elise? I swear it wasn't just professional." Tasha laughed, a sharp knowing sound that made my blood run cold. "Professional? Don't kid yourself. They've been sneaking around for weeks. Nathan's been putting moves on her since the quarterly sales review. I mean, seriously, Simon has no idea. Weeks. My world tilted on its axis. Weeks of deceit, weeks of lies. Weeks during which I had trusted her completely, believed in the marriage we had built together, while she quietly dismantled it. I moved on, making my way to the mezzanine where the view of the lobby gave me a vantage point I could exploit. And there they were, Elise and Nathan, oblivious to the fact that the world, or at least I, was watching. Nathan's hand rested on her lower back as they navigated through the security desk. Elise leaned into him, her hair brushing against his chest in a way that spoke of intimacy, of familiarity. He whispered something that made her laugh, really laugh, the kind of laughter I hadn't heard directed at me in years. I didn't just watch. I documented. 3 photographs, taken discreetly, each one a dagger of proof that pierced the illusion I had lived under. Her face, flushed with delight. His posture, confident, possessive. The casual way they moved together, as if the world outside that lobby didn't exist. Back in my office, I reviewed the images on my laptop. Each one was a confirmation, a reality I had been avoiding. Elise wasn't just cheating, she was methodical, intentional. She was playing a game, and I had been unwittingly holding her pieces. I thought about the promotion, the board meeting, the corner office I was supposed to claim. Everything I had worked for, everything I had dreamed of, now existed in a landscape tainted by betrayal. If I won the CEO title, she would stay. For the money, for the status, for appearances. If Nathan won, she would leave me without a backward glance. Either way, I was nothing more than a pawn. But pawns could become queens, and kings could strike without warning. I wasn't powerless. I sought Frank Morrison immediately. He was already at his desk, tangled in Ethernet cables, coffee in hand, eyes sharp with a mixture of suspicion and concern. "You look like hell," he said. "Don't tell me you're acting on impulse again." "I need your help," I said, sliding the photographs across the desk. "Nathan Lockach, Elise, evidence. I need to know everything. Emails, messages, devices. Anything that can confirm this isn't just a one-time mistake." Frank studied the images, his expression hardening. "This isn't just a mistake. She's been planning this, professionally and personally. We'll set up monitoring on the guest network, encrypted, invisible, can't be detected. You'll see everything. But Simon, be careful. Once you start this, there's no going back." I nodded. Careful wasn't the word that mattered anymore. Strategic was. Cold. Calculated. I had already crossed that threshold the moment I saw Nathan's hand on her back. By late afternoon, Frank's system was in place. Every device connected to the guest network could be monitored. Every email, every message, every click could be traced. I didn't need to spy for weeks. A few hours would suffice. At 3:12 p.m., Frank's encrypted ping arrived. "Conference room C. Activity detected. I moved with quiet precision, slipping into the rarely used corridor leading to the 31st floor. The door to conference room C was closed, but thin walls transmitted voices with alarming clarity. "I'm telling you." Nathan's tone was smooth, predatory. "We have to wait until after Friday. Klein's decision will decide everything. If Simon gets the promotion, she stays for the money. If I win, we start fresh. Either way, it's perfect." Perfect? Elise's voice carried a softness that turned my stomach. "Is that really perfect?" "Yes," Nathan said confidently. "Everything goes as planned. Divorce, assets, new life, all calculated." Calculated. That word echoed in my mind. Every action, every smile, every interaction. It was all part of a larger design. Elise wasn't just betraying me emotionally. She was dismantling my professional future as well. I ducked into the supply closet, heart hammering, mind racing. Every piece of information I had gathered was a weapon. And yet, I felt the cold clarity of strategy forming. She thought she was clever, playing chess while I played checkers. But I had been studying the board, predicting moves, waiting for the moment when I could turn the game entirely in my favor. As they left the conference room, Elise smoothing her hair, Nathan adjusting his tie, I saw the casual intimacy between them. The way his hand lingered at the small of her back, the way her eyes sparkled at his jokes, proof that this was more than a fling. This was a partnership in deceit. At home that evening, I didn't confront her. I didn't call. I didn't shout. I sat in my home office, legal pad open, laptop glowing in the dim light, and began a new kind of calculation. The intersection of law, evidence, and strategy. Illinois divorce statutes, asset division, prenuptial agreements, everything I had ignored as background noise suddenly became crucial. And then I remembered the prenuptial clause she had insisted on. Infidelity voids all claims to the other's assets, including future earnings. She had signed it with a casual smile, thinking it was a formality, a placeholder in case life ever went wrong. Life had gone wrong, and now that formality was my lifeline. Photographs, emails, witnesses, electronic communications monitored by Frank. Evidence that could dismantle her plan entirely. For the first time in days, I felt a spark of control amidst the chaos. Elise thought she was orchestrating my downfall, but she had underestimated me. She had not anticipated the patience of a man who had clawed his way from scholarship kid to imminent CEO. Friday would determine everything. But this Friday was no longer just about the board meeting, the promotion, or the corner office. It was about exposing the truth, about reclaiming control, about showing Elise and Nathan that I was no pawn. They were the ones who would be trapped on the board, predictable, their moves visible to someone who had already anticipated them. As I closed my laptop that night, the city outside dim and misty, I felt the cold edge of determination settle into my bones. Elise had chosen her path. Nathan had aligned himself against me. But kings, even betrayed ones, know how to strike, and I intended to strike first. Friday morning arrived with a gray Chicago drizzle that blurred the edges of the city. Everything looked muted, almost cinematic, as if the world itself was preparing for the corporate and personal warfare that was about to unfold. I didn't see the rain as gloomy. I saw it as camouflage. Today, the battlefield was Meridian Industries, and I intended to emerge victorious, fully armed with knowledge, patience, and strategy. The previous evening had been a whirlwind of research. I had revisited every scrap of evidence, every photo, every whispered comment I had overheard. Frank's monitoring system had delivered a treasure trove of information, timestamps of Nathan and Elise's secret communications, logs of devices connected to the guest network, and glimpses of meetings that were far too intimate to be considered professional. By now, I knew more about Elise's duplicity than she knew I suspected. I started with the legal framework. Illinois divorce law, community property statutes, asset division, alimony calculations, they became my armor. The prenuptial agreement, which Elise had insisted on before our marriage, was my sword. Its language was clear. Infidelity voided her claim to my assets, including future earnings. Photographic evidence, electronic communications, or witness testimony would suffice. I had all three. By 7 a.m., I had my plan forming in a quiet, ruthless clarity. I didn't just want to catch her. I wanted to neutralize her advantage and reclaim control. For years, I had been climbing corporate ladders, studying strategy, learning patience. Now, all of that training would be put to the test, not just professionally, but personally. I called Frank before anyone arrived at the office. "We need everything cataloged," I said. "All communications, all movements. I want a complete timeline of her interactions with Nathan, everything she's done in the last 3 months that violates company policy." Frank hesitated only for a moment. "Simon, once we go down this road, there's no going back. Are you sure?" "I'm sure," I said. "This isn't just about infidelity. She's manipulating my career, my future. If I do nothing, I lose everything. This isn't revenge, it's survival." Frank nodded, already understanding. "All right, I'll compile it, encrypted and untouchable. You'll have a dossier that even the most meticulous lawyer would envy." While Frank worked, I turned my attention to Nathan Lockach. Unlike Elise, who was predictable in her ambition, Nathan was a professional predator, skilled at exploiting opportunity. His charm had won clients, and it had now won him my wife's affections. But charm alone didn't make him untouchable. Every move he had made left traces: emails, calendars, schedules. With Frank's help, I traced his every step, creating a web of evidence that documented his intent and his involvement. The clock ticked, each second amplifying the tension. Elise arrived at the office, her usual polished self, unaware that I was already several moves ahead. I watched from my office, maintaining a composed exterior while my mind raced. She moved through the building, smiling at colleagues, her laughter light and effortless. But behind that facade, I saw the patterns. The little glances at her phone, the subtle adjustments in her schedule. Everything a marker in the timeline I was constructing. By mid-morning, I had drafted an initial strategy. If she tried to influence the board meeting through deception or manipulation, I would have proof. If Nathan tried to sabotage my promotion, his actions would be documented. And if either of them attempted to claim my assets, the prenuptial agreement, coupled with the evidence, would make their claim null. I decided to take a proactive approach. Instead of waiting for Elise or Nathan to make a misstep, I began planting seeds of distraction. A strategically placed rumor about upcoming audit reviews, subtle reminders to the board about operational excellence, small errors in marketing reports that would be flagged in the next meeting. Each move designed to buy me leverage, to destabilize the environment where my enemies thought they had the advantage. Lunchtime came, and I barely noticed. The office hummed with normal activity, phones ringing, keyboards clacking, colleagues laughing and arguing over client proposals. To everyone else, it was just another Friday. To me, it was the calm before the storm. I ate a sandwich at my desk, eyes scanning the floor through the security cameras, noting Elise's interactions, Nathan's movements, the way they communicated. Nothing escaped my attention. By 2 p.m., Frank had compiled the first complete dossier. I opened it carefully, page by page, email logs showing clandestine coordination, time-stamped messages between Elise and Nathan, photographic evidence of meetings outside of official work purposes. Each piece of evidence confirmed the narrative I had already suspected. Elise wasn't just cheating. She was systematically sabotaging my career to protect her own interests. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the cold thrill of control. For the first time in days, I wasn't the victim, I was the strategist. Every betrayal, every lie, every whispered comment I had overheard now existed as a weapon. and I was ready to wield it. There was one last element to consider: timing. The board meeting, where I was supposed to be crowned CEO, would decide everything. But Elise and Nathan had assumed I was distracted, vulnerable, unable to anticipate their moves. They underestimated the patience and calculation of a man who had spent a lifetime climbing from nothing to nearly everything. I drafted a detailed schedule for the next 48 hours, mapping out my movements, the moments when Elise and Nathan would be most exposed, and the contingencies for unexpected developments. Every step had a counterstep, every action a reaction. I became the embodiment of precision, focus, and cold determination. Evening came and the office lights dimmed. I stayed late, reviewing the evidence again, cataloging each interaction, noting patterns, constructing the timeline that would become my shield and sword. The employees who passed by my office had no idea of the war being waged within the glass walls. To them, I was just Simon Drake, meticulous, focused, ambitious. They didn't know I was a man betrayed, calculating the downfall of his enemies with the patience of a chess master. Finally, as the city outside darkened under the persistent drizzle, I closed my laptop and leaned back. The board meeting was tomorrow. Elise and Nathan thought they had control, but I had the advantage of foresight, evidence, and strategy. I thought back to the photos I had taken in the lobby weeks ago, the whispers overheard in the marketing department, the subtle betrayals that had accumulated over months. Each one had been a warning, a sign that something was wrong. And yet, I had waited. Patience had allowed me to gather proof, to map the terrain, to prepare a countermove so complete that they wouldn't know what hit them until it was too late. Sleep came fitfully that night, but it was purposeful. I dreamed not of betrayal or heartbreak, but of strategy, of chessboards and pawns, of kings and queens moving according to a plan that only I fully understood. Elise had assumed I was distracted, that my focus was on the promotion alone. She had not accounted for the man she had underestimated, the one who had survived scholarship snubs, corporate politics, and decades of grinding ambition. Tomorrow, the board meeting would decide the CEO. But tomorrow, Elise and Nathan would also learn that the rules had changed. I was no longer playing checkers, no longer reacting to their moves. I was playing chess, with full knowledge of their strategy, and I intended to checkmate both of them. As I drifted into a restless sleep, one thought crystallized above all others. They had chosen to play games with my life, my career, and my heart. And I would make them pay, not with emotion, not with rash action, but with the cold, precise inevitability of someone who knows how to win. The first move was already set. The pieces were in place. And the storm that had been brewing in my mind for weeks was about to be unleashed. Friday would not just be a board meeting. It would be the proving ground. It would be the battlefield. It would be the day I reclaimed what was mine. Friday morning arrived with the kind of overcast sky that made the city look like a monochrome photograph. Chicago dripped gray rain, the streets slick and reflective, as if the world itself mirrored the tension inside Meridian Industries. I arrived early, my coat soaked at the collar from the drizzle, my mind sharp and focused. This was it, the day my professional life would be cemented or shattered. The day my personal life, long manipulated by Elise and Nathan, would be laid bare. The boardroom awaited. On the 45th floor, the air was sterile, perfumed faintly with ambition, power, and fear. I passed familiar faces in the hallway, colleagues who smiled and nodded, oblivious to the storm brewing behind my eyes. To them, I was Simon Drake, meticulous, confident, destined for the corner office. They didn't know the man who had spent weeks gathering evidence, studying betrayals, cataloging deceit, and preparing the ultimate counterstrike. I arrived first, as always, claiming my temporary throne at the head of the table. The familiar leather chair felt heavier today, a weight both literal and symbolic. Soon, board members began filing in, papers rustling, tablets lighting up. And then came Elise. She walked in with a practiced smile, her heels clicking against the polished floor, eyes glancing around like a predator assessing prey. I noted the subtle stiffness in her gait, a micro-tension she hadn't even tried to hide. Confidence, for her, had always been a mask. Today, it was starting to crack. Nathan arrived last, his easy charm in place, smile broad, handshakes firm. His presence was calculated. He had always been confident in his ability to manipulate situations, to charm clients and colleagues alike. But I had prepared for him. Every move he had made, every subtle gesture of influence, had been mapped, timed, and catalogued. The meeting began as usual, a ritualistic review of quarterly performance, client portfolios, and strategic initiatives. But I wasn't here just for business. I was here to reveal the truth, layer by layer, methodically, like a surgeon exposing a hidden fracture. Halfway through the presentations, I excused myself, citing a minor discrepancy in the financial summary I had prepared. I walked deliberately to the conference room's side panel, where Frank had placed a tablet connected to the secure network. It displayed live data, emails, encrypted messages, and time-stamped evidence of illicit communications between Elise and Nathan. I returned to the table, casual, calm, as though I were merely adjusting my notes. Elise's eyes flickered toward me once, and I noticed a micro-expression of panic, too quick to be conscious, too real to ignore. Nathan, oblivious to the storm about to break, smiled confidently at a board member, completely unaware that the boardroom's calm exterior was about to shatter. "Before we move on," I began, voice steady, carrying just enough authority to command attention, "there's an important matter that requires our immediate awareness. It pertains not only to internal operations, but also to the integrity of our corporate environment." Heads turned, eyebrows raised. Elise's practiced smile faltered. Nathan's confident grin stiffened. I continued, my tone deliberate, measured. "I have come into possession of evidence indicating serious violations of both company policy and ethical standards, involving activities conducted during work hours and using company resources for personal gain." I activated the tablet, projecting emails and messages onto the conference room screen. Names, timestamps, screenshots, all clearly documented. The messages detailed clandestine plans between Elise and Nathan, meetings scheduled under false pretenses, manipulations designed to sabotage operational reports, and coordinated efforts to gain advantage in the upcoming CEO decision. The room fell silent. Board members leaned forward, eyes narrowing, whispering to one another. Elise's face drained of color, her posture rigid. Nathan's confident demeanor wavered, his hands clenching briefly under the table. "This is serious," I said, allowing the weight of the moment to sink in. These actions were not isolated incidents. They represent a sustained effort to manipulate company operations, influence decision-making processes, and compromise the integrity of this board. The individuals involved acted knowingly and intentionally, in violation of both our corporate code of conduct and their fiduciary responsibilities. Elise opened her mouth, but no sound emerged. Nathan shifted in his seat, attempting a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. I continued, calmly, methodically. "I have provided photographic evidence, electronic communications, and witness testimonies. This documentation substantiates the claims of unethical behavior and breaches of trust within the organization. Given the severity of these violations, I recommend immediate review by our legal and compliance teams." The board members exchanged glances. Harold Klein, the aging CEO who had once assured me the promotion was mine, raised a hand. "Simon, these allegations are serious. Do you have corroboration beyond these materials?" I nodded. "Yes, sir. Frank Morrison, our IT director, has verified the authenticity of the communications and device logs. Additional witness accounts are available from marketing department personnel. The boardroom seemed to shrink, the air thick with tension. Elise's eyes darted nervously, her smile gone, replaced by a mask of desperation. Nathan's confidence was evaporating in real time, replaced by the dawning realization that he had miscalculated. Given the evidence presented, Harold Klein said slowly, voice firm, it appears there has been a significant breach of trust in company policy. These actions have serious implications for both the individuals involved and our organizational integrity. I leaned back slightly, maintaining composure, letting the weight of the evidence and the board's scrutiny do its work. Elise shifted in her chair, attempting to speak. I silenced her with a calm but firm gesture. The floor was mine. Further, I continued, it is worth noting that the prenuptial agreement between my wife and me provides legal precedent regarding fidelity and associated claims to assets. Evidence of her infidelity has been thoroughly documented. Should there be any dispute, these provisions, along with corroborating evidence, ensure accountability and protection of rightful interests. A ripple of murmurs ran through the room. Elise's lips pressed tightly together. Nathan's face was pale, and his hands fidgeted under the table. The board's attention was now firmly on them, evaluating their credibility, their integrity, and the risk they posed to the organization. Harold Klein cleared his throat. Simon, your professionalism and diligence are evident. I believe the board must deliberate on these matters immediately. In light of these findings, we will postpone the promotion announcement until all facts are reviewed thoroughly. My pulse quickened, not with fear, but with controlled satisfaction. The first strike had been delivered with precision. Elise and Nathan, who had thought they were orchestrating my downfall, were now fully exposed. Their carefully constructed plans lay in shreds before the board. Elise finally spoke, her voice trembling, high-pitched, brittle. Simon, this isn't how you should. You can't. You underestimate me, I said softly, letting the words sink in. You assumed I wouldn't notice. You assumed I would remain a pawn. But pawns can become kings. The board members exchanged glances again, some nodding in approval, others whispering into their phones. Nathan attempted to speak, but I cut him off before he could salvage any pretense. This isn't just about corporate ethics, I said, voice rising slightly to command the room. It's about accountability, integrity, and the principle that no individual, regardless of charm or ambition, is above the standards we uphold. Actions have consequences. Minutes later, security escorted Elise and Nathan out of the building pending review. The remaining board members looked to me, eyes wide with a mixture of awe and respect. Harold Klein leaned forward. Simon, given the circumstances, I believe the decision regarding CEO is now clear. Your diligence, integrity, and strategic foresight make you the obvious choice to lead Meridian Industries. The promotion I had fought for, clawed toward, and nearly lost, was now officially mine. The corner office, the seven-figure salary, the executive parking spot, it all belonged to me. But the victory was far sweeter because it had been achieved not through ambition alone, but through foresight, strategy, and justice. I left the boardroom that afternoon with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in months. The rain outside had stopped, leaving the city slick and reflective. The betrayal I had endured had been transformed into triumph. Elise and Nathan had misjudged the underdog, assuming they could manipulate and deceive without consequence. They had learned, far too late, that a man betrayed could also be a man prepared, ruthless, patient, and calculating. As I settled into my new office that evening, the city lights reflecting in the glass, I allowed myself a quiet smile. The board had witnessed the truth. The promotion was official. Elise's schemes had collapsed. Nathan's manipulations were exposed. And I, Simon Drake, had emerged not just as CEO, but as the rightful king of a game that had been rigged against me. The crown was mine. The boardroom was mine. The city below stretched like a kingdom at my feet. And I knew with a cold certainty that no one would ever underestimate me again.